Chapter 1. Childhood and a Turbulent Life to the Accession to the Throne. You have probably heard of Peter the Great emperor of the Russian Empire. However, few people know the details of his childhood and how he rose to the top of power. Let's begin by unpacking his background. In 1672, Pyotr was born in Moscow, the son of Alexei I. He was the son of the king of the Russian Empire, Alexander the Great, and the son of Alexander the Great. However, his childhood was not a peaceful one. His mother, Natalia Narishkina, was the second wife of Alexei I, which intensified factional strife within the court. In particular, the conflict between the faction that supported his half-brother Ivan V and the faction that favored Pyotr as the next emperor shook his young mind. In 1682, when Pyotr was only 10 years old, he and his half-brother Ivan V took the throne as co-czars, but the real power was in the hands of his sister-in-law, Sophia. As regent, Sophia seized power, and despite his young age, Peter became increasingly dissatisfied with this situation. During this period, while witnessing the intrigues and power struggles of the court, he immersed himself in playful military training in a village outside Moscow. Later, in 1689, at the age of 17, Pyotr staged a coup d'état and ousted Sophia. He established himself as emperor in both name and reality. His early experiences, factional strife, intrigue, and military training, greatly influenced his later policies and leadership style. We will see in the next chapter how this young Tsar transformed the huge Russian Empire. Chapter 2. Tour of Europe, the beginning of Westernization. Peter the Great is known as the Tsar who promoted Westernization, and it was his ambassadorial trip from 1697 to 1698 that was to be the catalyst for such a change. This trip was a turning point that changed the future of Russia. Pyotr hid his identity and visited many parts of Europe. He was not just a tourist. His purpose was clear. He wanted to absorb the knowledge and technology that would bring Russia's military might, industrial technology, and culture up to the level of the Western world. He was particularly impressed by Dutch and English shipbuilding technology. Pyotr worked as a shipbuilder himself and learned how to build ships. This experience led directly to the later creation of the Russian Navy. Pyotr was also exposed to European court culture and military organization, which he decided to bring to Russia. One of the things he learned in Europe was the introduction of the beard tax. At the time, the Russian nobility and clergy were proud of their long beards, but Pyotr considered it an archaic custom, and ordered them to shave their beards. This order was not merely a cosmetic reform, but the first step toward modernizing Russian society as a whole in the Western style. This inspection trip is an episode that symbolizes that Pyotr was not just a Tsar, but an innovator and a learner. He wanted to learn and apply what he learned to the development of his country. Let us now look at how he transformed Russia into a military power. Chapter 3. The Northern War and the Construction of St. Petersburg. The Northern War is an inescapable part of the story of Peter the Great's reign. This war, fought between 1700 and 1721 against Sweden, was an important turning point in Russian history. At the time, Sweden was considered one of the strongest military states in Europe. Russia, on the other hand, was still considered a backward country without modern military power. However, Pyotr was determined to transform Russia into a military power through this war. Although the Russian army struggled at first, Pyotr's reforms gradually bore fruit. He established a conscription system and trained new soldiers made up of peasants. He also brought in experts from abroad and introduced the latest military technology and tactics. As a result, the Russian army won a major victory over the Swedish army at the Battle of Poltava in 1709, which changed the course of the war. Moreover, during the course of this war, Pyotr built a new capital, St. Petersburg. This city was not only an administrative center, but also a window to Western Europe. Although the construction of the city, built on marshy land, was hard on many workers, Pyotr completed the city as a symbol of future Russia. The Northern War and the construction of St. Petersburg are important episodes that illustrate Pyotr's bold vision and drive. In the next chapter, we will look at his contributions to culture and education. Chapter 4. Education and Cultural Reforms, a Passion for Knowledge. Peter the Great devoted himself not only to military and political affairs, but also to educational and cultural development. He believed that ignorance was the enemy of the state, and he implemented a number of reforms to improve the level of knowledge among the Russian people. First, in 1714, Pyotr established the first state school in Russia. In this school, not only basic education such as reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also practical studies such as navigation, engineering, and astronomy were taught. Education was open not only to the nobility but also to the general public, a major step forward in laying the intellectual foundation of Russian society. In addition, Pyotr was instrumental in the development of the typographical culture. He promoted the introduction of printing technology and published many books. In particular, he translated books on Western science, technology, and thought into Russian and disseminated them widely. This was the beginning of Russia's path to becoming a knowledge superpower. He also devoted himself to the promotion of art and music. He introduced Western opera and theater to Russia, allowing the people to experience a new wave of culture. These efforts encouraged the modernization of Russian culture and served as a milestone for the later golden age of the Russian Empire. Chapter 5. The Legacy of Peter the Great, Impact on Future Generations. Peter the Great's legacy had an impact not only within Russia but throughout the world. His reforms were not merely temporary changes, but laid the foundation for the modernization of the Russian Empire. In particular, his style of governance and policies had a profound influence on later Russian emperors. Pyotr's vision also paved the way for Russia to occupy an important position in the international community. His policies of westernization, military reforms, and the spread of education were important elements in his promotion of Russia's recognition as a member of Europe. Even after his death, Pyotr's influence did not disappear and he continued to contribute to Russia's development. His achievements inspired future emperors and revolutionaries, and his achievements are still highly regarded today. Looking back on the life of Peter the Great, one is struck by his tumultuous life and unwavering vision. His story is a great tale that should be passed down through the ages. So far, we have traced the life of Peter the Great and his remarkable achievements. His story is more than just a chapter in history, it gives us clues for the future. Pyotr's goal was not just to reform, but to fundamentally change the country. It is no exaggeration to say that his westernization policies, military reforms, and urban planning laid the foundation of modern Russia. At the same time, however, we must not overlook the cost of his policies and the suffering of a people bewildered by rapid change. How can we apply these historical lessons? It begs us the question, how do we support people in the midst of change, and how do we envision the future? Pyotr's legacy is an important guide for how we think about leadership, not only in Russia but around the world. Reflecting on his bold challenges and their impact on the world may help us to think about our own future as well. How was it? If you liked this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.